What's up, everyone? How's it going? Welcome back to another Ask the Trainer. My name's Elly, and I'm joined by some very special people. First of all, a very special guest, renowned artist and sculptor, Deborah Wright. Hey, Deborah, how's it going?
Really, really well. Thank you, Elly.
And also two other very special guys just below me, Dr. Sassi and Darrin. Hey, guys, how
Hey, everybody.
you doing? Also, hey to those of you in the chat. Hey to Matthew and Christian. Thanks for joining us on this Ask the Trainer. So before we get into what we're going to be doing and recapping last month's DPP, chatting more to Deborah about her amazing corner of the world that is her industry, I thought I'd talk about a few bits of housekeeping like we normally do. So if I just share my screen, on this page here, it is the maxon.net events page. You can see all the great stuff that we have going on, everything from live in-person events, for example, SIGGRAPH, which is actually ongoing right now. I think we're about to do day 3, if I get my time zones right, as well as all the live shows that we do. For example, Ask the Trainer, we have VFX and Chill on Fridays. And then on Mondays, we started a brand new demystifying series where we're covering all of the UV workflows. And so, yeah, feel free to head over to that and see all the great stuff that we have going on. And as a reminder, if you ever miss any of those shows and you want to kind of catch up, everything gets recorded, or pretty much everything gets recorded. And Dr. Sassi, I can thank you in person for doing the timestamps. Normally, I do it anyway, but I can actually, to your face, say thank you so much, because all of our sessions get timestamped thanks to this guy here. He really puts in a lot of time and effort to do those, and we are very, very appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, feel free to head over to our Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, learn something new. Yeah, that's what we do. That's why we do this stuff. Also, again, I spoke a little bit about SIGGRAPH. The last time I brought it up, which was in Monday's session, I wasn't sure if it was being live streamed or recorded. Turns out it is. So if you head over to the main Maxon, so the @Maxon VFX YouTube channel, you can catch up on day 1 and day 2. And then as we can see here, day 3 is starting very, very soon. Another quick thank you to our lovely community, those of you who watch our shows. We like to say thank you for being part of these sessions by giving away free t-shirts. All you have to do is pay for the shipping. I believe Kyle will be putting all of these links that I'm talking about, including that secret password, so you can grab yourselves a very special Maxon t-shirt and represent along with us. Again, talking about kind of getting started, learning new things. I know last month's series was a lot of ZBrush. If you want to get started with ZBrush, then you can head over to Cineversity, where you can see Anna Carolina did an amazing series on getting started with ZBrush. We also have getting started series across all of the Maxon tools. So Cinema 4D, Redshift, Universe, insert Maxon product here. And then a couple of final things is I'm going to show some love to the very special ZBrush Summit, which is happening. It's the 10th anniversary. And Deborah, I believe you will be there. Is that right?
I am so excited. I bought my ticket the day that they announced it.
Amazing. Yeah, that is set to be, again, an amazing kind of event, an amazing summit. Who knows? Maybe some of us will get to be there too. We shall see. Cool. So housekeeping aside, this is where we get to the fun stuff. We get to the really interesting conversation with you, Deborah. And so for anyone who maybe didn't catch the demystifying series, introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about you. Recap a little bit over the last 4 weeks for anyone who perhaps missed it. And we can also link to the sessions as well.
I would love that. I'm pleased and honored to, well, let me start my story with Once Upon a Time, because good stories start with Once Upon a Time.
They do.
Once upon a time, I was a sculptor for the mannequin, movies, product development, toys, just about anything. I was busy out there slinging clay or wax or foam to do my job. And I loved it so much. And then about, it's 10 years now of my brother and a couple of other people in my life introduced me to ZBrush. And I fell in love. Absolutely fell in love because I've been waiting for a program. There were other programs out there that, CAD assisted programs that were out there, but they didn't suit me because they weren't juicy. They weren't organic. And ZBrush was everything I wanted. And I just dove head first right into it. I haven't looked back.
Did you know immediately as soon as you started using ZBrush that you were like, yes, this is what I've been
Yes.
waiting for?
Yes, I did. I absolutely did. I remember my son sitting next to me and instructing me on some of, because he was in college at the time, and he was studying to be a game asset creator, and he was teaching me, the basics. And I remember sitting there thinking, "Wow, this is real. I can do this. I can once I figure this out, I can do this." And it does take some time to figure it out. It's it's a huge program, very deep, very wide, very dense. And it's what keeps me coming back to it is the stunning level of versatility within the program itself. And thank you, all the programmers out there, mwah, mwah, for doing all the hard work and the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Us users, we love it. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I second that. Thank you to all the developers with whom we would not have this amazing software to use.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah. Cool. So just before we went live, we were talking about and I'm quoting you here, all the weird and wonderful and unique projects that you get to do in your kind of very special corner of the industry. So I wondered if you would mind talking about some of those. I don't know if you have stuff that you could show for those or whether it's all a bit secretive at the moment.
There's most of everything I do, I can't talk about. It's really annoying. It's absolutely frustrating. And I know that the game developers out there know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you're creating something that requires so many people to come together and create a world, it's you want to bring this world in a splashy way and you can't talk about it. But what I can talk about is the amazing opportunities I've had to create a world with other creatives and make visions come true. If I'm doing my job right, if I am, hitting all the marks, you're going to walk into a themed entertainment environment, Disneyland, Universal Studios, whatever. You're going to walk into that place, that space, and you're not even going to see my work. You're just going to naturally believe that it has always been there. And that right there is the goal. And excuse me, allergies are just dreadful right now. That is my goal, is to make it so lovingly realistic to the story that the vision has sprung from. That is my goal. And a lot of the work that I've done, as I've mentioned before, that people would know is what came from practical sculpting. So a lot of maquettes, which are models that are used in factories. So, you'll make a model of Geppetto, for a float. And Geppetto is 18 inches tall. But when Geppetto is produced properly for the public, he will be 18 feet tall and he will be an animatronic puppet. And that kind of stuff has just been the fodder of my life. That is what I do. I create other people's, I bring other people's visions to life.
So you talked about like the practical side of sculpting. What would your kind of maybe advice or recommendations be for, let's say, maybe a new artist, maybe a student who's looking to get into the digital world of sculpting? Would you recommend having that same like experience with practical sculpting? Do you think it helped when it came to creating digitally?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you very much. Yes, is the answer, the very, very short answer. But the very long answer is everything I've ever done as a digital artist has been informed by my practical experience. And the reason being is everything I make now usually is produced. Like either it's going to be CNC routed or it's going to be 3D printed and it will become a thing. So everything I make needs to live in this meat world. And I don't do assets for games. It's not my forte. I don't have a strength there because there's other elements that I don't think about that a game developer needs to have in their toolbox. That's not my natural way. So I make things like jewelry. You have to wear, it has to be able to be worn by a human, or costuming pieces, or for example, the Lady Gaga tree. That's how we started this whole thing. This whole conversation between us was you all wanted to know a little more about Lady Gaga's tree. And that tree was created in order to house a piano. It had a function and it needed to live in the real world. The other thing it needed to do, it needed to be pulled apart and put into cases and shipped all over the world because she was traveling. It was a world tour. So all of these things, all of these elements had to be, in my mind. And without my practical experience in the real live world as a sculptor, I would not have had, if I had not done that, I would not have had the tools to be able to bring it to the product in ZBrush. I know some sculptors who are, digital modelers who have never picked up clay at all, and they're intimidated by it. And I wish that they would choose to try to exercise with the practicalities of and the squishiness of clay or foam or even stone, because you learn a lot about just the weight of being alive and gravity. Gravity really informs a lot of what I do.
Deborah, could you explain a little bit how your experience with material, plaster or clay or styrofoam, translates into the digital room? Can you hear me?
Actually, there's a little bit of conflict with what I'm hearing. Can you repeat the question?
I hear something as well. Someone has loudspeakers on also. When you have material, clay or plaster or anything, your practical experience, and you want to translate this into ZBrush. So this is a question for everyone who works at the moment analog. How is it possible to get this feeling that what you have, the inertia, the weight of material inside of ZBrush? Because I think this is a question that many people have who are sitting on the fence, should I go digital or not? And I will miss the smell, I will miss the messiness and all of this. But can you tell me how to translate it, and what is the advantage of have maybe the option to save versions or make versions and save all the time, have the whole history, something like this?
Great question. I love it. When dynamics were introduced, I think it was 4 years ago, to ZBrush, and the ability to use gravity and liquefy, my world changed. My sculpting in ZBrush shifted and became much more natural. You could feel the weight of my drapery. You could feel the weight of skin on bone. Just a touch of dynamics. You could just feel, that flappy part of the arm when an arm is lifted. You can actually feel that because the dynamics in ZBrush using that particular tool really, really changed the naturalism, and you can use it very subtly, and its subtleness makes it believable. And unfortunately, it requires 8 ton of time of pushing a button, watching it render, and waiting for it. So demonstrating it right here and now would be a little tedious, but what I can say to you is that when dynamics were introduced, I was throwing confetti and running around the room. I was so excited.
Yeah, I remember during the 4-part series when Ian told you about the AO option to see more the wrinkles and the folds. And I think every imprint or impression of something gives a different light, gives a different feeling. And we are, as humans, so able to read all these tiny little details. We have maybe no idea about it, but we read it. And we know when it's wrong. We can't put the finger on it why it's wrong. But this is exactly what you described when you get more naturalism inside of the application.
So when I started sculpting in ZBrush, I had a teacher. His name is David Igo, and he's in Los Angeles, and he's part of Sideshow and Tweeterhead, and he is a truly phenomenal human. But he is also, within, I'm going to say, 2 weeks of us working together, he said, "Oh, you come from practical sculpting, don't you? How do you know?" And he said, "You completely ignore symmetry." I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm paying attention to symmetry." And he goes, No. You break symmetry so fast. Most people who come to my class who have had digital backgrounds, say, for example, Maya or 3ds Max or Rhino or Revit, they come with this mindset of working in symmetry in breaking symmetry at the last minute. And apparently I was breaking symmetry like that because I didn't have to worry about that. I'm naturally symmetrical when I work because, I didn't have the luxury of having a tool that could, do it in A pose. I started as a mannequin sculptor. So you don't do a mannequin in A pose, you do the mannequin in its proper pose. And so symmetry was an entirely new way for me to think. And that's one of the things I've had to retrain myself. And it's taken me a long time to embrace symmetry, but I see the wisdom now.
Talking about training, and I maybe step a little bit ahead already. In our talks before, you mentioned the importance of a mentor. I hope I found the right pictures of your mentor. She does mosaics with class. Do I got her correctly?
Yes, that's Donna Hollander. She is my sculpting mama. I met Donna when I was 19 years old, and I took my one and only sculpting class from her in college. And fast forward many years later, I had the pleasure of not succeeding at what I was doing, which was scenic painting. I was unhappy and I wasn't doing very well because I just didn't have the passion for it. I thought it was what I wanted to do, but it just wasn't there for me. And a friend called me up. Rabbit calls me up and says, "Hey, you know how to sculpt, right?" And I'm like, "Sure." I had no idea. I had one class. I show up with a 2D portfolio, and this little tiny brown-haired fury of a woman walks out. She goes, "Oh, Debbie Wright." And nobody's called me Debbie Wright in a million years. And I'm like, my mouth dropped open. I'm speechless. And she goes, "Remember me? Donna Hollander. I was your teacher." And she was the mannequin she was the department head. She was the master sculptor. And she hired me on. And I have nothing but gratitude for that day. She changed my life.
And speaking of changing your life, how important is it for everyone who starts in the industry to find maybe a mentor, someone who has a little bit more experience and gives you something?
Yeah. We were having this conversation prior to coming on the air, and for all the just have joined us, one of the things we all agreed with is that working at home and alone is not as nourishing as working in an environment where you have other artists of other technical skills around you. Because I would never have learned about armature construction, metalworking. I would never have learned about casting, molding, finishing, painting, the specific deco that goes in, the hand painting that goes into a mannequin's face. Never would have learned about carpentry or human shipping. I would never have learned all of these specific things, the process of what do you call that, manufacturing, if I'd not had the privilege of working in an environment and being immersed in it. There is a benefit at working alone, is that you can focus and get laser focused on what you're doing, but there is a price to pay, and not having a cohort around you, especially if you're a young artist, I would highly recommend trying to find a way to be part of a studio. Whether it's, whether you're doing games, whether you're studying to be I would call a themed entertainment specialist, as myself, working for movies, whatever. See if you can get yourself into some environment where you are surrounded by people who are better than you. And people who are better than you are always going to challenge you, maybe not directly, but at least just by sheer example. You're going to start asking questions and, learning. And there's a phrase, steal like an artist. It's not really stealing, it's learning. And you're going to benefit by being surrounded by people who are better than you.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more. I feel like, especially over the last couple of years, being part of this wonderful training team, I feel like pretty much everything I know and everything I bring to these streams is from one of the guys or girls who have taught me something. I've gone, oh, hey, I want to know how to do this. How do I do this? And then we have like an hour or 2 hour conversation. So I couldn't agree more. Like, that's definitely for me how I've learn as much as I have over the last few years. It's all great watching YouTube, and of course we love watching YouTube, but really having that conversation with someone and being like, but why does it do that? Why is it not working for me? Really, does help improve your knowledge.
So secret admission, Elly, I have this fantasy that I get to do a hybrid job where I get to work like 2 days a week in the cubicle right next to you. So I can lean around and go, hey, Elly, and ask you.
Should we make it happen?
What?
We can make it happen.
Oh, yes, I love that idea. Because honestly, truly, I think I am a better sculptor because I know what it takes for the nice people in the metal shop to build me the armature. And I am going to be a better digital modeler if I know what you need in order for you to work the magic that you work.
Absolutely.
And speaking of team building, you talked about Vanguard. Can you expand? Did I got this term wrong?
Vanguard? Vanguard?
Vanguard?
Vanguard?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where you connect with other women and
Yes.
what do I got wrong?
I've never heard of Vanguard, so maybe that's something that you and Elly were having a conversation about, or maybe I missed something there. Oh, we are the Vanguard. Oh, forgive me, I did use that word. Yeah, being a vanguard, being the leading edge of women in special effects. Elly and I were discussing this. It's a privilege that I get to be, in some respects, and this is maybe some magic. I have been saying for many years, I would love to be that bridge between practical sculpting and digital sculpting, that I can help people make the connections of how this works. And what I'm seeing with women is I'm seeing younger women coming in and they're making connections with, I'll say, older people in the industry, and they're bringing in so much fresh perspectives and just tearing down old constructs. And I'm thrilled to, be part of that leading edge. It's really a privilege.
But it's important, like, as you said, to kind of, for the younger generation to thank the older generation, because where you say the younger generation comes through and they have these ideas and they're kind of like pushing these boundaries, but if it wasn't for the women who came before them, they wouldn't maybe have that platform. And so I think it's all going in like a really great direction.
You've touched on one of my very favorite topics, which is ageism. And one of the things that we have lost in our Western culture is respect for the elders. And we see it around us all the time. It's so hard to avoid it. But in older cultures, the master was the oldest dude in the room. He was the oldest, crotchetiest, crankiest old person. But that person, male or female, doesn't matter, because we all get old. If we're lucky, we get really old. That's the person who's the knowledge keeper. That's the person who has the most experience and has avoided the saber-toothed tiger more than everybody else because they're still alive. So one of the things with ageism, and it couples with, women coming into our world as, workers with bigger faces, bigger representation, is that we are tearing down these constructs of the disrespect of elders or the pushing off of elders. And, women are now breaking down those walls, because women who are over 40, over 50 are now starting to get the kind of acknowledgement and respect that men of the same age have naturally commanded. So these two things are now coming together, and we're starting to break down these barriers even more.
Yeah, and when you take a look in sculpting and you expand it a little bit into abstract art, for example, Sarah Sze has such a huge body of work that she has all over the world, and she is accepted widely. I have learned so much from her. And it's, of course, more than something that she would maybe do in Cinema 4D if she would be a 3D artist and in ZBrush. But we have a full spectrum. We are not limited to just do this or do that. And I think women these days, and I study them, because when I was young, it was limited. I have to admit it, and I hated it. But today we have access via internet and all of that, where we have every voice equally. We have only to learn to listen equally, and equally in so many ways, not man or woman, everything between even, or beyond, if you like, in every race or culture. And we have such a rich environment, and I'm happy that you push your corner of the world in the best way. And I think Elly has explained it in the same way with the team, and I've heard her saying that so often when she came to the Maxon office and everyone was chipping some knowledge in. I think this is exactly what you're describing. I have experienced this in the Pixel Corp, where we said everyone shares whatever they know, and so we gain more knowledge. There were people from ILM in it and whatnot. We had thousands of people. And it's a great culture when you establish it, but you have to search for it. You have to search for people who have the same chemistry or rub you in the wrong way, but are friendly to you. And you have to do this. And I think you do it so well. I'm so glad to have you here for that.
Well, I've had the privilege of working with a wide variety of people, from little teeny tiny studios where we're making toys, and it's just a handful of people, maybe 5 or 6 people that create the entire studio, to working on crews of hundreds of people making movies. And it's an army. We come in like the circus comes to town. Is when you make a movie. It's everything and everybody. And the people I've learned from the most, especially thank you for all of the hard work that I've learned from Abu Becca, Jamie Miller, Michael Rabbit. These are some of my mentors who have trained me along the way and shown me, what it is to be a sculptor and devoted.
How
Go
do
on.
you handle it? Because you want to present yourself in the studio as a professional. So you know your stuff, of course. Your ego is big and everyone has to believe that. And then at the same time, you want to grow. That means growing, means learning, means you have to admit that you don't know everything. So you are in a very tight spot all of a sudden. You want to show that you are good and big. At the same time, you want to learn. And so how to handle that balance?
So you can't know everything. That's the bottom line. And when I went back to college to get my degree, I learned that I didn't know everything and I had plenty of room to learn. And one of the things I took away from one of my favorite teachers, I asked a question and she stopped, put her hands on her hip, and she was German, so she had this very thick accent, and she says, I do not know, but I will find out and I will have an answer for you. And I loved that. This brilliant woman of 5 languages did not know. And she was willing to admit it in front of an entire classroom, I might add you, of experts. And she did not bear any shame doing it. So when you're with the right people and you say, I don't know, but I'll find out, sometimes that person who you're with will say, oh, you don't know? Let me show you. And that right there is like manna and gold all wrapped up in a bologna sandwich. It's the best thing ever because this person actually recognizes that you're hungry and you're curious and you want to learn, and they're willing to take your little mitt and lead you through to the answer that you're seeking.
And asking stuff and the elderlies and put this together brings me to one theme that I've asked you. Which are your 3 favorite artists? And Michelangelo was, for example, one. So I thought, having accumulated a half year in Italy, I know Michelangelo. Oh, what do I have to search for that? But as usual, I don't trust myself so much. So I bought a book about him. 500 pages later, I said, wow, I had no idea. And the first earliest painting, maybe the first 100 or so, with all these weird animals that they had during the time as a symbol for bad and Satan, and I don't know what. And the other woman, who was a German, by the way, as well, who illustrated books with fantasy objects and so on. And then there was a third one who was a sculptor in France who traveled also a lot to Italy. And I tried to find where is the connecting thing between all of that. So how do I learn more about Deborah based on her little... And the magic sentence, maybe very simple, is everything that we can't express with words, we do as visual artists. And so that was the mythical, non-descriptive, what I found connects all of these 3 from my point of view. And can you tell me a little bit more about how you free yourself with sculpting, with 3D, with expressing in a visual way, maybe in a spatial way even, what you might not be able to connect to other people? Like I normally say, 3D is the most universal language in the world. So please learn it. It's important.
So when I think about the 3 artists that I chose, because I've got so many other artists I absolutely adore, but when I think of Chenard, I think of Schulemeth-Furtwängler, and I think about Michelangelo, they all seem so very different. But what each of them brings to me is a thrilling excitement of devotion to their vision. And the story about the Last Judgment painting that Michelangelo was to paint. He didn't want to paint it. All he wanted to do was sculpt. And it was the means to his end. He had to go do this thing. He had to perform like the trained monkey that he was for his audience in order to get to his sculpting. And I know what that's like as an artist, to have to slog through disciplines in order to get to what I really want to do. I really understand that feeling. And I really have a great deal of empathy for Michelangelo. And all he just wanted to do was just sculpt. He just loved to sculpt. And boy, do I understand that. Shulamith, on the other hand, I loved the ethereal depiction of these fairy angels, gnomes, and imps that lived in her world. And she, according to her own word, actually saw these beings. And she was just directly translating the angels and the spirits that she was seeing. And as a little girl, because I discovered her when I was very little, I was just entranced with the idea that this woman who was having these visions, full-grown woman, was having visions, and she was able to paint them and translate what was going on in her world and bring them to me, and bring the awe and bring this visceral feeling of wonder. I could really feel her wonder in her paintings, and I really wanted to do that with my art. But I turned out to be a terrible illustrator. It was not good, but that's okay. I don't have to be good at everything. I turned into the sculptor that I am. That being said, when I also think about Chenard has a sense of being able to translate everyday human experiences so elegantly and so eloquently. You don't even question it when you look at their work. When you look at Chenard's work, you know that the woman who has her hand on the down pillow is putting her hand on a down pillow. And you're not thinking that, oh, that woman is putting her hand on a down pillow. Your brain just naturally accepts it. And this is made out of terracotta. So those three artists bring very unique elements that have informed me as an artist. But all of them are all extremely detail oriented, and I love the details. And I hope that answered your question. I think I went off on a tangent.
I think the question would be answered after maybe 12 hours of discussion. It's totally deep, and when you say details, I could open the Pandora's box and say details means you have attention to detail. Attention to detail means you are perceptive. You're looking at the world. You just don't work from memory. You really look. What do I see? Do I see it really? And this is, I think, what I see when Ian is doing his show. He puts attention to detail, and he has this puts a little bit here, a little bit there on the cheeks, and all of a sudden there's a different character. It was a blob of something, and bang, 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 there's a face. And it's a different face than he did maybe 4 weeks ago. So, and I can only encourage people to maybe just sit in the park and watch people, which noses they have, which ears, which bodies, how they behave. And that's so useful for everything you do. In 3D, for example, observation. Is it glossy here? Is it shiny? Is it rough? Is it wrinkly? This is all the stuff that you can do before you even open the application. You can't train to be an artist before you do anything. You can't just sit in a coffee house and learn to be an artist. It's the first step. Observation, and charge yourself with all these impressions and then express it.
It's funny you bring up sitting in a coffee house and turning into an artist. I know somebody specifically, Niles Resch, who spent an entirety of life many years sitting in coffee houses, training himself to draw properly. And he is now one of the finest draftsmen I know. And I think even as head of an illustrator as I am, one of the best ways for me to train myself is to sit in a coffee shop and pick somebody or something and draw it to the best of my ability. And then ask myself later, when I have a chance to get some distance, what would I do differently? And then try it again.
Yeah, and I think those things are all the parts that we sometimes miss when we do training. We open the application and here's the tool, here's the tool, here's the tool. And what I try to do at the moment with your knowledge and experience to push a little bit, everyone has already the experience, has observed something, has an impression from something that was really life-changing and is not really expressed anywhere, but it would be a unique source for the work that we can do with ZBrush, Cinema 4D, and all the other tools that we have. And so like Picasso said, he sleeps very well because whatever impression he has during the day, he has put on the canvas before he goes to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's in, through, and out, and then be in peace again, instead of carrying stuff with you. And during my many decades of doing art, I have seen many people over decades even developing themselves. And the first years is mostly putting all that old stuff out first. It's horrible stuff. No one really likes it because it's very personal, psychologically and whatnot. But in the moment you have shuffled it all out, all this pureness comes out when you can really create. During that time, your tools have become maybe better. Is that something you can relate to? Was there a process where you had to get rid of old stuff to really get to the purity that you have in your work at the moment?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I pushed that rock up a hill for many years when I first started ZBrush. Oh my gosh, the kind of purging I had to do as an artist and push through some of my bad habits, and identify new ones. Oh yeah, there was a lot of heavy lifting at the first few years, and I gave myself permission to really, really be dreadful for a long, long time. And there's lots of days where I still don't feel all that spectacular, but I know that I've done enough. What I once was told was derriere in chair time. I've done about 5,000 hours now in my chair, and can't quite call myself the master like Farzad. Oh my gosh, Farzad. Hi Farzad, you rock. You're an amazing sculptor and I love your ZBrush work. Any rate, fangirl moment, pardon me. Those are the kind of things that you look at somebody else's artwork that you admire, and you look at your own and you go, how do I connect those two dots? And really what it is just making a ton of work that you never show to anybody, because really it's like lifting weights or hitting a tennis ball on a backstop for hours on end. You gotta practice. Your bottom has got to be in this chair, and you've got to have your stylus in your hand, and you got to be looking at your reference. You can't be pulling out of your brain all the time, because what we see is not always the truth. So training your eye hand coordination, what your eye sees, that it comes out of your hand, that's massive training time. And that's where, going back to Niles sat and drew 100 roses. Draw 100 of anything, but 100 roses. Now the man draws roses like a master, and it is with his own voice, because as you push through those 100 roses, you start developing your own voice as an artist. And it will happen with Cinema 4D. It will happen with ZBrush. It will happen with any program or any tool or any technology that you choose to devote yourself to. You will find your own voice.
And that is a good point. Let me ask you another question, if I may. When I see the pictures that are running on the screen at the moment with your work, some are spectacular. And I always ask myself how people tap so deep inside of them that they can be so creative, because I'm all the time with myself. Whatever I do, it is used to me. Not boring, but I'm used to it. So it doesn't really excite me as much as to see other people's work. So you see always how wonderful the other people are, and you see only, oh, I couldn't get this in my expression as I wanted. How to overcome that idea and how to really flow out what you have inside. I think it's always this feeling that you have to get to the canvas, to the screen, into a model. How to get there.
Oh, where do I start on this answer? This is a great one. This is awesome. So I have two worlds in lots of ways, and sometimes I get the pleasure of having them intersect. But I have, for example, a lot of this on the role that you've got going on here. I've got people who have already designed and created and made a thing, whether it is a float drawings of a parade, whatever it is, they've already done all the heavy lifting creatively, and I just get to make the thing. Sometimes I get to contribute creatively as the sculptor of the design, but more often than not, my job is really to try to translate what that 2D design is, that flat design, and bring it into 3D. On the other hand, when I'm doing my own work, and I have the privilege of being designer, conceptualist, and the executioner of the thing, whatever the thing is, I spend a lot of time flipping through magazines and books and going to places where I'm going to get inspired, whether it's the zoo or I'm going to go for a walk for Gaga's piano. I went and I walked in the woods and I hunted down dead, tortured trees. And I sat and I looked at dead, tortured trees. And I drew tortured, decaying trees. Pinterest is our friend. So is Google. We have so many resources available to us, but sometimes just going and taking yourself and getting your bottom out of the chair and going to some place like the library. I know that sounds weird and archaic, but sometimes going to the library and taking the books down and leafing through inspires in ways that you can't get inspired with looking at things digitally. There's something that we humans need, and it's that tactileness. We need to touch, and we need to smell, and we need to feel. All those things really come into play into creativity. And when I'm designing for myself, I'm grabbing for it all.
I have a quick sort of question, which is sort of on this and sort of going back to when you were talking about putting in all of those extra hours, even sort of when it's tough. And this is something I'm still sort of figuring out the answer to. But how do you deal with those hard days? Those days when you're feeling less creative, you're uninspired, you need to find that motivation, because as artists, I'm sure we all feel it. I definitely feel it throughout different stages of kind of my week or years. So how do you deal with that? Where do you find that?
I love that question. Thank you. That's a great question, because we're all human. We all have a bag of dreck that we have to carry around with us. We all have something we're struggling with, whether it's, parents that are, not of the best health, or maybe we're not making ends meet and we've got financial stresses. So those kind of stressors are real. They will inform your experience as a human and as a creative, to be able to authentically acknowledge, yeah, that really sucks. My cat is really sick and I really, really want to make her feel better. but I've got this project I need to do. And this is where professionalism comes in. And you sit yourself down and you pick up your stylus and you do the work to the best of your ability with what you've got then. And maybe with what you've got, that's 15 minutes you're able to devote to whatever practice you are committing to. But it's constantly returning. It's not giving up on yourself and pushing through that ugly space. Okay, so you really want to make a beautiful sculpture of a bust. You really want to do a beautiful head bust, and you've made the nose countless times, and it's just terrible and it's awful. The only way that you're going to get to the right nose, whatever that nose is supposed to look like, is by doing it over and over and over again. And then when it just becomes too much, standing up and walking away and giving yourself a break, because there's a balance that I've had to achieve. Some days, especially since I work from home, some days there's way too much going on in my personal life, and I'm not able to devote as much as I want to my professional world. And I do the best I can. And other days I'm able to be laser sharp all day long, and giving myself a break and recognizing my humanity has probably been one of the most valuable things I've ever done for myself. Yesterday was a complete nightmare. I don't have any HVAC. I live in a place where it's really hot and humid, and I had to solve some problems in order for me to be able to comfortably go back to work. So now you might hear in the background a couple of fans are going and a portable air conditioner that is making my studio room tolerable until I can get my HVAC fixed. It sounds stupid, but life comes in, and as a creative, you just have to flow with it. You have to be able to, give yourself grace that you're just as human as the next person. And sometimes the creative flow is not there, and it's sheer perfunctory. You're just pushing through. You're just going through the motions until that inspiration grabs you again and you get to go for the ride. But I think it was Edison who said that, it's 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, because you got to fail a lot. You fail a lot.
You fail 2,000 times before you get the bulb.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. We know that we don't go that way.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about what you are doing with Universal, Disney, and so on. And I want to exactly connect to the point that you just answered based on Elly's question. Before I came to LA, I had a little company in Berlin and in Munich. And my problem was, of course, I can work, I can learn my stuff, the newest tools, or I can find new people who would be clients. And I found each of the three would fill a whole work life already. So how to balance this? I think this is a problem we all have when we start out. How to find clients, how to stay up to date with everything, with my skill level, with the tools, and how to find inspiration at the same time, or whatever you think you need to be professional. How do you balance that? You have maybe some experience in that. And tell me more about Universal and Disney and all of that. I want to hear.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you the fun stuff first. No, I won't. I'll tell you that later.
Oh.
I think I brought this up during my webinar. It was like, yes, my project sheet. And this is what my project sheet looks like. This is what I do every day. I literally write down every little thing I do, whether it's, I get up in the morning, I have a morning ritual of meditation, and I have a little tea, and then I go for a walk and I do some stretching because I sit in this chair a lot and I need to take care of my body. So I do all that in the morning. But I write all this stuff down so that I have an idea of where I'm spending my time. And you got to be rigorously honest too. That's the other thing. You got to be really honest with yourself. Did you spend an hour and a half fiddle farting around and looking at YouTubes when you should have been doing something else? Well, when you look back and you see how much time you are wasting, then you can course correct. Sometimes, though, that wasted time of watching YouTubes is just exactly the right thing you need in order for your brain to go and take a breath so that you can come back fresh to your project. So I really, really, truly believe in documenting and logging my work day so that I can refer back to where I'm spending my time. And where I'm spending my time right now, here's the segue. Where I'm spending my time right now is I am working on a brand new theme park. I am doing a bunch of architectural details, which don't sound all that exciting, but the theme park gives me so much beautiful, juicy stuff to work with. I am so excited. I can barely even sit still when I'm working. I'm just thrilled. And it's being developed in Orlando. It's through the Universal Properties. So thank you, Universal Creative, for bringing me in. And I am so excited to be part of this project because it's expansive and juicy. And I'm hoping that I do my job well and you don't even notice I was there.
And we hope we can make a show with you about this. Universal, and we meet all in Orlando and we have a little chit chat and sip some coffee and tea. And
wouldn't that be fun to go for a little tour and I could say, and that was made with ZBrush and that was made with ZBrush. Yep. That would be a fun tour. I would love that. That would be a ball.
I would love that as well, and especially when you see it then. Which brings up another question, and you can relate again to Universal, please. Does size matter? Because when we look on a screen, it's always this size, and then you have to translate it in a miniature, as you have shown with the little tree and the door, and then you have these huge installations like we see at the moment here, and then a little puppet head. How do you expand your own world inside of the screen space to make something big like in Orlando?
When I think about how the scale, which is really an interesting question, I really do think about how is this going to look when it is being seen 100 times bigger than what's on my screen. That is really important to take in consideration because what I consider a minor detail is going to get blown up huge and it's going to become glaring if I'm not thinking about what its scale looks like. I have this ability to visualize what it is to be an ant and go into my scenes. Actually, when I'm working, I'm actually envisioning myself being little and looking at these things at the places that they're going to be installed. For example, is it going to go above a door? What does something that goes above a door, what does its scale look like? What is the detail? What is the level of detail that goes into something like that in order for it to translate to my eye at this human level? So oftentimes I will find something that relates, like, maybe go to a bank and go look at a header, that, a sculpted header, or a church, and go look at the arches and the columns and see, what is the relationship? And I can take that back with me and imbue it into my piece, whatever that is. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think Universal knows that it makes sense because they hire you again and again, I guess. And can you explain how the workflow is as far as you are allowed to tell?
Yes, I can. I can explain the workflow. So most of what's happening is happening in the UK and is being developed, I believe, by designers in London, if I'm not mistaken. All this work is now coming from there. All this beautiful, gorgeous designs, these drawings, these concepts, these ideas, these stories are being translated and brought here for the company I'm working with. And the company I'm working with has now contacted all their I'll say the support team, all of their casts and characters that support creating this world. This company are masters at making theme parks. It's just, that is just they are just supreme masters at what they do. And they bring in specialists like myself who directly address their needs. Now, when you ask me, how do I get clients? Well, it's been years of developing relationships, and this is a brand new, sparkly, shiny new relationship. It's a new company for me to work with, and I'm really excited because their vision is so expansive and very specific at the same time. And that gives me comfort as a vendor to them. But getting into that arena of working at this level with companies that do produce these kinds of products takes a lot of knocking on doors. I've knocked on doors for decades. And it also takes an ability to be rejected. I spent years, and I still do, I'll be quite honest, sending out letters of interest. I'd like to work with your company. This is who I am. Let me introduce myself to you. Here's my portfolio. There's my website. Here I am. What can I do for you? And you get a door slammed in your face. A lot of, go away. We don't need you. And it's not personal. It has nothing to do with me as a human, or even for that matter, what I'm capable of doing. What it has a lot to do with timing and numbers. The more you roll those dice, the more chances it's going to come up double sixes. But you got to roll the dice, and you got to get out there, and you can't sit in your little space just hoping somebody's going to find you on ArtStation and pluck you out of the masses and take you on a magic ride. It just doesn't work that way. How it works is by going out there and banging on the doors that you want to be let in on. I really, really wanted to be in the world of entertainment. And I really wanted to make stuff, things that lived in this world. I did not want to do video games because I didn't relate. It didn't touch me. So I got passionate about hitting up places that made things like puppet shops, like the Jim Henson Studios. I made sure to hit up scenic shops where props and special effects were being made, and appliances for, costuming or special effects, shops, monster shops, that kind of stuff. I was banging on those doors. Toys, housewares, giftwares, product development, jewelry. I was banging on those doors, and of course, reacquainting myself to all my old clients. Disneyland, Universal, other people who I've worked with in the themed entertainment industry, some of the scenic shops like Jet Sets that managed the Gaga show. All those people, I had relationships prior, and then I had to reintroduce myself as a digital artist. And I was only willing to do that after I had proven to myself that I was capable of doing the work as a digital artist, to the level that I really wanted to be at as I was as a practical artist. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and let me iterate. My game plan when I submit movies to festivals is, first of all, you have to put a lot of love into see what kind of festival you submit. That means which company you would submit your request. And when you don't do a good job, the rejections will be higher because you sent to the wrong peers. The other one is there are thousands of people who send these letters out. To get a rejection is not personal, as you said. And my mantra is, that's part of the game. I'm in it. I get rejections. And
Mhm.
put it away. Focus on the good stuff. If you get 3 or 4 festivals that love your movie, that's more than getting somehow in small things or whatever you want to do. Do what you love. And that's the message that I got from you. Find what you love and do it, promote it, and stick with it. Is it a summary?
Don't even know how to be grateful enough for being introduced to sculpting by Donna Hollander. Let's circle back to my mentor, Donna. And what I can say is thank you for changing my life countless times, Donna. You, if you're watching, what I can say is this. I have found what makes my heart shine. I'm not an accountant. I don't do numbers. I am not gifted with 3ds Max. I will never think in boxes. I will that I look at people who design cars and create rocket ships, and I'm like, oh, there's so much responsibility there. And I'm just like, you can have all that. It's so scary to me. But what I do, where I shine, where I'm, making characters and things and products and humans and monsters and animals. That's my juice, and that gets me excited. I just deep dive and grab with both hands. And if you can find the thing that makes you shine, then do it. Just go for it. That's my best advice. I never knew that they would pay me good money to play with Play-Doh, is what I can say. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine anybody throwing so much money at me to push pixels around, and I get to do it gleefully. And I would never change it for anything in the world, because with ZBrush, I didn't walk away from my traditional background. I didn't shut the door entirely, but I gotta say that ZBrush has given me an entire new world available to me. And I don't ever see myself retiring, because I don't think I'm ever going to hit the limit of all my questions being answered, because that's how big and fabulous this program is.
And I think this is pretty much a wonderful last word that you just put. We
Yeah,
express
very
the
well
love
said.
for the things, for what we have. And of course, we see the creativity in accountants or technologists or engineers. There's a lot of stuff that we might not see or see, but to find what you love is so important. And as I get always told from my partner when she tells me, people will feel if you put love into it or not. And it's palpable. It's like knowing if it is wrong or right when you see a shadow in a 3D rendering. It works or it doesn't. And you can't even say why, but everyone can tell you when it is right. And that kind of love that you put in to make the details right, to make the expression right, the imprint when something is pressing on it, to observe the world, to find a mentor, find good clients, and all of that universe that you have created, to stress the word universal again. It's maybe a good last word, and I don't know if I cut here short. If you and Elly want,
I do have a question.
Yeah.
If we're privileged enough to have people watching this conversation, I wanted to make sure that I addressed any questions that might have popped up from our viewing audience, because this is what we're doing this for. I really want to be able to answer anything that might have come up if there are any questions.
Yes, there are a couple. I didn't want to kind of invade the flow of this wonderful conversation though, but yeah, we did have a couple questions that came in. So the first one was actually all the way back at the beginning. It's slightly off topic, but it's still to do with sculpting inside of ZBrush. Mohammed was wondering, what, in your opinion, is the best perspective or field of view to start sculpting a human face?
Oh, I'll tell you how I learned how to sculpt a face. Maybe this will help you. It's the same way I address it digitally as when I did it practically. What I was taught was to use a measuring system. And there's no perspective. You want to come straight on, and you want to, well, many things, but you start by taking pictures as dead on as you can, a profile. No 3/4 views unless it's just for information. You also want to take a picture pointing down, from this angle down. You also want to go from what they call worm's eye view, you want to go up. The reason you want to do this is that you're going to take calipers and you're going to measure your subject, and you're going to measure all of these little points on a person's face that don't change. For example, the corners of your mouth, the little indent of your eye, the ends of your eye. Where does your eye to your eyebrow? Where does the corner of your eye to your eyebrow? Where are all those what are those measurements? And by getting hard numbers, you're able to translate what is on paper and your photos that you've taken, and you're able to make it in clay. That's where I started. Or by doing this method, what you're doing is you're also training your eye so that when you go into doing a portrait in ZBrush, you're able to see what you took pictures of reflected on your screen. And you can also see in course correct where you're going off base. But when you talk about perspective, if you're talking about, do you want to have a focal length or some sort of do you want, are you looking for a heroic look? That's actually something that will happen later on when you pose your character. What you really want to get first down is you want to get the mechanics of doing a portrait by getting the basics taken care of. So you absolutely want to make sure the eyes are placed properly, the mouth is placed properly, the nose is at the right place, jaw, everything is hooking up correctly, so that when you can break away from that, you've got your foundation already set. And I hope that answers your question. If not, please don't hesitate to contact me either through Instagram or through my website, and we can continue this conversation, because I love talking about portraiture. It's my favorite thing to do.
No, that was a great answer. Also, before I do the next question, what was your Instagram? We can drop that and throw that in the chat as well.
It's my name .art. Deborah
Perfect.
Wright, all one word, .art. And that's actually my website, www.deborahwright.art. So there you go.
Perfect. Thanks. What I'll do while you're answering the next question, I'll throw that link in the chat.
Thank you.
Cool. So we had another question from Casey. This was when we're going back talking about growing as an artist. Yes. Wondering, you were talking about trimming your portfolio as you grow as an artist, but what about showing your growth? That could be fun as well to see the transition. So I guess this is when you're then sharing your portfolio with a potential client. Is it important to show the growth, or would you trim out, let's say, the less experienced work versus the new experienced work?
So I'm going to expose myself, Casey. Forgive me. I'm going to be totally transparent right now. It's really embarrassing to watch my B-roll up there on my website, because I know my website needs some fluff and folding. It's very old. I am not a website mistress. So seeing all these old pieces rolling over and over again, I'm like, I gotta get rid of that and put up some new stuff, because the truth of the matter is you want to show your most powerful work.
I can throw that out there as well if you like.
Thanks. Really, truly, you want to show your client, and you also want to curate your portfolio, whether it's physical or a page that you want to send your new client to, your potential new client to. You really want to curate to the best of your ability. I have the privilege and the luxury of having a bit of a reputation that precedes me, which is really, I'm super lucky for. And that I don't take for granted. So every day I come to a new client, I'm literally a new client. It's a new day, and I'm showing the best work that I can that relates directly to whatever it is that client specializes in.
Well said. Cool. So we have one final question from Sponge D Bob. I'm sure it's not the actual SpongeBob, but hey. Wondering, work done by you is available physically, yet you choose to share a digital portfolio. They are wondering why.
When I make the thing, whatever the thing is, it's made in ZBrush. And that is what I'm getting hired for. Now, I tend to show the digital work first and then show the product after, because I want them to have the relationship between the digital and the product, but I don't want them to, how do I say this? There's a lot of process that happens after the digital product leaves my hands. For example, the work that Ian and I did over the 4 weeks when we did the Demystify sessions, all that work, all those beautiful hours spent, sculpting, created a thing that when I put it in Ian's hands, he turned it into something even more fabulous. Just like if I were to put it into your hands, Elly, you exercised your magic on it. And sometimes when you just show the end product of what you've created, it's not it's the story of many artists that have been layered onto that product. When I show my part and then the end product, it helps create that bridge. It creates the connection for the designer or whoever the client is. And it helps actually, manage expectations. I'd like to be a better renderer, and I'm going to continue watching you, Elly. I got my eye on you, girl. I want to be a better renderer, but I don't come to it naturally like I imagine you do. But I sculpt, and I love to sculpt, and I'm always going to show my sculpt first, and then I'm going to show the rendered or the painted product later. Because, again, I don't want my client to believe that this is what I'm going to produce for you, when actually this is the part that this is the element of the job that I'm involved in.
I love that. Also, I'm more than happy to trade secrets. You can teach me to sculpt and I will teach you to render. That can be a good deal.
I love that so much.
We can do that. We've said it live now. So I always say,
I know, now we have to do it.
Has to happen.
Pinky swear.
Where's my camera?
There we go. There we go.
There we go. It's happening now. Okay, well, yeah, I guess we ran over a little bit, but this has been
We
such
have.
an
Holy mackerel.
it's it's the general rule that we have to overrun, especially when it's such an exciting and enjoyable conversation. It's lovely listening to the way that you answer questions, the way you talk about the industry and talk about the work that you do. And again, to Sassi or Dr. Sassi, the questions that you have talking about the influences and everything. Everyone was saying in the chat that it's been an epic conversation, and I couldn't agree more. So we definitely weren't going to cut it short.
Well, I don't know who's out there, but what I can say is my digital door is open, and I would love to continue these conversations, because one of the things that I want to stress is that connection is so valuable. And I really, really value the time that you've spent with me, Dr. Sassi, and Elly especially. I mean, you guys have just made my afternoon, and there's going to be a lot going on in my head when I'm working today.
No, you've definitely made ours. I mean, not only today's session, but all the information, all the knowledge that you shared during last month's Demystifying series. And if anyone didn't see those, seriously, go back, Maxon Training Team YouTube, and watch them, because they are incredible. So yeah, honestly, thank you so much for coming on again as well and sharing even more valuable information.
Be good to yourself is the last thing I want to say. Just be good to yourself and listen to your body.
I like that. Yeah, we will leave that as the final words of wisdom. But thank you again so much to everyone who was watching, and to you, Deborah, for coming on. Maybe, I'm sure it won't be the last time.
I hope not. Gosh, I hope not.
You come back, please. Thank you. Thank you so
Glad
much
to.
for being so open to share. And I know people will have a benefit from it, and you will hear echoes from that. Maybe in a year and two or so. I'm sure you will. Thank you.
I hope I see you both at the summit. And for those of you out there, make your way to the ZBrush Summit. You will make friends for the rest of your life there, as well as learn things you never thought you could.
Would be nice.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well,
wonderful.
I guess, yeah, we can wrap it up here. But yeah, thank you so much again, Deborah, and to everyone else. And hopefully see you all soon.
Yeah, please. Bye, everyone. And thanks for listening.